Boat Building Strategy, A Story Across Time. Part 1. Introduction. The Call of the Water. From the very first moment humans stood by rivers, lakes, and seas, we looked across the water and wondered, what lies beyond? Water was both a barrier and a promise. It separated tribes but also connected them. It made life harder, but also made survival possible. And so, humanity learned the art of building boats. Not just any floating log or raft, but vessels that could carry families, warriors, merchants, and dreams. From the Nile to the Pacific, from Viking fjords to Japanese harbors, every culture that touched the water invented strategies for boat building. This is not just a story of wood and nails, of planks and resin. It is the story of survival, of exploration, of strategy. It is the story of how to build something strong enough to face the river, the sea, and sometimes even the unknown. In this journey, we will walk through each step of the boat-building process. From the very first question, why do you need a boat? To the moment it touches the water for the first time. Along the way, we will hear echoes of history. Egyptians sealing reeds with tar, Polynesians lashing canoes together to cross entire oceans, Vikings shaping oak into warships. And when we are done, you will understand not just how to build a boat, but also why boat-building strategy has always been one of the most important skills in human history. So let us begin. Part 2. The Purpose of the Boat. Every boat begins not with tools, not with wood, but with a question. What do you need it for? A fishing village on the coast of Japan, 500 years ago, had one answer: a small boat, steady enough to handle the waves, light enough for one man to pull ashore, and reliable enough to last years of fishing. Meanwhile, far away in Scandinavia, Viking chieftains had another answer: a warship, sleek and long, with space for warriors, shields and cargo from raids. Their boats were not just for fishing, they were weapons of strategy, built to terrify, to strike, and to escape quickly. On the other side of the world, Polynesians gazed at endless horizons. Their boats were not for rivers or coastal fishing. They were for migration. They needed double-hulled canoes strong enough to carry families, livestock, and food supplies across thousands of miles of open ocean. The strategy of boat building always begins with purpose. A trading vessel must be wide, with deep cargo space. A warship must be fast, with room for men and weapons. A fishing boat must be simple, light, and easy to repair. An exploration ship must be strong, balanced, and able to survive storms. Even today, the same question remains. A modern shipyard building an oil tanker or a racing yacht starts with the same thought. What is this boat meant to do? Without a clear purpose, even the strongest boat will fail. With a clear purpose, even the simplest raft can change history. Part 3. Planning and Design, Drawing the Dream. Long before the first plank is cut, the boat exists in the builder's mind. The planning stage is both practical and imaginative. It is where a dream takes form. In ancient times, a master shipwright might draw simple outlines in the sand. He would trace the curve of the hull with his finger, explaining to apprentices how the boat would ride the waves. Egyptian builders drew designs on papyrus. Japanese carpenters carved wooden models. In medieval Europe, shipyards created half models of ships, scaled-down versions that allowed builders to visualize every rib and plank before starting work. The strategy of planning is simple. Anticipate the water before you touch it. Ask, will this boat face calm rivers or wild seas? Must it travel far or stay near shore? Is speed more important or stability? A river ferry in China's countryside does not need a sharp prow, but a caravel in the age of exploration needed a bow that cut through waves. A fisherman's canoe in the Amazon needed balance to hold a day's catch, but still be light enough to carry across land. Modern naval architects use computers to design hulls with mathematical precision, simulating how a ship will move in storms before it is ever built. Yet even in the age of computers, the principles remain the same. The water demands respect, and the builder must listen. To plan a boat is to imagine its journey before it begins. Every curve, every joint, every nail has a reason. A poorly planned boat is like a poorly written map. It leads
Part
only to
4.
disaster.
Choosing materials: wood, stone, and steel.
After planning comes the question of substance. What shall we build it from? The answer has always depended on the land around the builder. The Egyptians had little strong wood, so they bound reeds into boats and sealed them with pitch. For journeys down the Nile, this was enough. But when they built ships to cross the Mediterranean, they imported cedar from Lebanon, prized for its strength and resistance to rot. The Vikings used oak, hard and dense, giving their longships power and durability. Oak bends under pressure but does not break easily, perfect for ships that would cross stormy seas. In Japan, shipwrights often used hinoki cypress, a sacred wood. Its fragrance filled the shipyard as boats were built. Hinoki was light, strong, and resistant to insects, ideal for fishing boats and merchant ships in the Pacific. Across the Pacific Islands, Polynesian navigators chose breadfruit and koa wood for their canoes. They lashed planks together with coconut fiber ropes. No nails, no iron. Yet these vessels carried them across thousands of miles of open ocean. Choosing material is more than convenience. It is strategy. Cedar resists water and rot. Oak is heavy and strong. Pine is lighter, easier to work with. Bamboo is flexible, useful for rafts. Modern fiberglass is cheap and smooth. Steel and aluminum offer immense strength for today's ships, but every choice has trade-offs. A heavy boat may be strong, but difficult to move. A light boat may be fast but fragile. The builder must balance these truths. The material becomes the boat's voice. Wood creaks, steel groans, fiberglass hums, and the builder must decide which voice he wants his creation to sing with when it meets the water. Part 5. The hull and the keel. The backbone of the boat. At the heart of every boat lies one truth. Without a strong foundation, the rest will fail. This foundation is the keel, the spine that runs from bow to stern. The keel is the first piece laid in traditional shipbuilding. Everything else grows from it, like bones from a spine. To set a keel straight is to set the destiny of the boat. A crooked keel will always betray its builder. Once the keel is placed, the hull takes shape. The hull is the skin of the boat, the part that embraces the water. Its shape decides how the boat will live. There are many strategies. A flat-bottom hull rests steady in shallow rivers, easy to build, easy to repair, but unstable in rough seas. A V-shaped hull slices through ocean waves, swift and strong, perfect for long voyages, but more complex to build. A round hull carries heavy loads, like the fat-bellied merchant ships of medieval Europe. A double-hulled canoe offers balance and safety, a Polynesian innovation that carried families across the Pacific. The hull is more than wood or planks. It is a promise between builder and water. It says, I will float, I will carry, I will survive the storm. The story of the hull is the story of human imagination. Vikings carved their prows into dragon heads so that even the sea would fear them. Polynesian canoes were painted with patterns of ancestors, linking family and voyage together. Modern yachts curve sleek and white, built not only for strength but for beauty. The keel holds the boat together. The hull defines its spirit. Together they transform raw materials into a vessel that can conquer rivers, seas, and time itself. Part 6. Building the framework, the bones of the vessel. Once the keel is laid, the boat begins to rise like a living creature.
The framework, ribs, beams, and supports are like bones, giving the vessel its shape. In Viking shipyards, this was the moment when noise filled the air. Hammers struck, axes chopped, saws groaned as oak was bent into curves. Apprentices carried hot water and fire to soften the wood so the ribs could bend without breaking. Each rib was fastened to the keel, arching upward like the skeleton of a beast. In Japan, carpenters worked in silence. Tradition demanded focus. They cut joints with precision, fitting pieces together without nails, using interlocking wooden joinery passed down for centuries. Each rib, each beam, was placed with reverence, as if the boat itself were sacred. In Europe, great shipyards bustled with dozens of men. Frames rose like cathedral arches, one after another, until the outline of a ship stood proudly against the sky. The strategy of framework is balance. Each rib must mirror its twin on the opposite side. Too heavy, and the boat tips. Too weak, and it breaks. Too crooked, and it sails poorly. When the framework is complete, the builder steps back and sees not just wood, but potential. The skeleton of the boat is ready to be clothed.